there's an unfortunate stigma attached to British cars that even people who built them are aware of and sometimes agree with. But in many ways, these are some of the last great obtainable classics you can buy. So let's just say that Leyland occasionally left room for improvement. We may have taken that a bit to heart, as the only piece of our little GT6 we're using today is what we consider to be the best bit, the Michelotti design body shell. And over the last few episodes, we've focused up front, ending things off by trial fitting the factory valence panels and modeling a potential replacement for them in 3D. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but there's still plenty of time for course correction, as although it's been fun to play around with this, building a new front end is not actually the next step on our agenda. So today we're finally heading into the cabin to make a couple of seats fit, and how hard can that possibly be? When we bought the car 8 years ago, we knew the factory seats were completely toasted. And nothing there has changed. The foams are destroyed, the vinyl covers have cigarette burns and paint transfers, and really the only usable parts are the metal frames, which are still horrendous. The most obvious solution would be to rebuild them, which I looked into, and was absolutely horrified to learn that it would cost well over 4 times that of some nice used leather seats from a different car.
So naturally, that's what we did. This is one of a pair of 1999 special edition Miata seats that we bought back in September 2014.
And as a result, you may have seen a brief cameo by one previously, but with them now in the limelight, it's clear that they're in decent shape considering what they came out of is already pushing a quarter century. But predictably though, their literal shape isn't exactly going to fit our car, as the GT6 is over half a foot narrower than a Miata. And completely unrelated to that, I'm still not sure about the color tan, but anything's possible with enough stubbornness. Let's see what we can do. To reiterate, as I really can't stress this enough, the GT6 is small, and its floor pans have this huge taper at the back of them from factory to clear the original frame. However, back in episode 14, we removed that in an effort to free up space for the new seats. So now they'll just fit in here like... Right. Well, we tried. It's a tight squeeze on both sides, but that rear corner is still the main issue. Turns out, we never actually measured this, as the floor is between 17 and 17.5 inches wide, while the seat needs at least a quarter inch more than that. Plus, maybe another quarter inch for carpet, sound deadening, you know, car stuff. So, guess what comes next? Well, that's certainly freed up at least as much space as we've got. Let's figure out how we're going to mount the seats. These are the original Triumph rails, which have already been cleaned up, and we know they fit the floor pans. They're also very low profile, have an adequate amount of adjustment, and, well, we've got them. So I think they're our best starting point. They obviously need to attach to the Miata seats, which have this large steel pan we can modify, but seeing as there's also 4 threaded mounting points on here, let's use them and try to keep things tidy. Surprisingly, the rails seem to fit very nicely, with the bolt spacing and overall shape being about as perfect as we could hope for. And although there is a conflict back here, we don't get many breaks on this project, so I think the easiest starting point will be to remove the cross brace by grinding down the rivets and see what that does. There we go, good. This one doesn't want to let go. Interestingly, it's stuck in the lower piece. That gets me. That worked. So it's probably just mushroomed out a little bit, kind of like they're supposed to, and is stopping it from coming out. So I'll grind it down flush with this piece of metal, and then there really should be nothing left holding it in. All right, I'd say we're moving in the right direction. To avoid multiple types of hardware in this package though, we've elected to drill out and retap the original dainty Triumph threads to the same M8 by 1.25 pitch the seats take. And although the rails will also need opening up later to accommodate these larger bolts, that shouldn't take long, and with this side done, that's the easy part over. Mounting the rails to the seats is our main task then, and after working through a few design iterations, I think we've got a plan. Okay then, that is a start, but although the rear of the seat is being kept as tight as possible to the floor, we actually want to give ourselves a bit of thigh support up front. So a couple of risers are needed to join things together, and with a cardboard template helping to guide our way, we can press on. we got to put the roller wheels in so that the tracks will work properly, because right now there is some, I should be careful doing that.
Yeah, you're sitting on top of Jenga bollocks.
All of a sudden the whole car falls. There is some slop in the tracks, but it works. It bolted down. I can pull my little lever over and adjust it. Again, can't really do it right now because the roller wheels aren't in there. But that's a Miata seat bolted into a Triumph with about as much clearance as you're ever going to see a Miata seat. I mean, even down through here. Because the hope is that, we haven't really got it set up right now, but the hope is that these pieces will still fit. And I think they will. So that'll just finish off that area.
Pieces.
And I can still recline. Can actually go back quite a ways. I'm stretched. I got my work boots on, and I'm like probably 4 inches away from the firewall, and I'm just completely stretched out. I could sleep in here. For being such a small car, it's actually pretty impressive inside.
Yeah.
Quite. Though you'll notice as Dad's getting in that there are a few driver controls in play right now, and I'd love to go more into that, but in an effort to stay focused, all I'll say at this point is these are important to play around with to ensure we've got the seat fitment right, but they're really just placeholders, and we'll cover it all in a future episode. What becomes the problem is this. There's his eyes.
Yes, it's noticing.
There's how much he's got to get to the top of the windshield.
But when you consider the fact that everything I need to see is up.
Yeah, I know, but that's the problem. That's where this cuts it off. The traffic lights are up here. The license plate of the truck in front of you is up here.
Visor that hung kind of in the way a little bit, so we just need to make sure that whatever we have in the way of window space.
Well, didn't we measure out one time one of my buddy's trucks, the word Ram in the grill is higher than the roof of this thing?
Yes.
Thought so. It's all part of the fun though, eh? It's great to be at this stage, but with the seat taken out again, we noticed that the front brackets pulled in slightly during welding, making fit up unnecessarily tight. So a pipe wrench is deployed for its leverage to pull them back again, and a quick check with the straight edge shows that it solved the issue perfectly. Our last step then is to remove the front tie bar, as we did with the rear, by grinding down the rivets. Then drilling them out, hammering, drilling again, and finally a chisel can finish it off. This is going to drop everything underneath, and that's okay because I'll pick it up and we'll do it again.
Sort of like
Don't need
that.
to do it again.
The other one broke when it fell.
But that works perfectly. Currently, they're a little bit more what you'd expect from seat rails, 2 individual rails. But this piece, which although it used to be on the front, we're actually going to repurpose it, and it's going to go across like this. And that should provide a bit more stability side to side in the seat. Just make sure that these don't feel like they're rocking underneath you just on that one little single bolt. Alright, a dimpled eye would have finished off those front speed holes nicely, but this is still a very acceptable solution. And talking of speed holes, while you may think it's hardly necessary to worry about weight at this point, just out of curiosity, the old rails come in a hair shy of 3 pounds. The new modified one with extra bracketry is almost imperceptibly over 3 pounds, so that's kind of a win. Next up then, we should really get the roller wheels installed, and as we had fun getting them out, this should be even more interesting. All the welding we just did caused some distortion in the frames though, so our first job to get things moving smoothly is to straighten out the sides with a pair of Cobras by Knipex, or Knipex. Linguistics notwithstanding, they seem to have done the trick, so here's the deal. These little roller wheels sit in the channels and are prevented from moving too far by some stamped detents. A few of them had to be removed to get the tracks apart originally, but by drilling a small hole and installing a screw, we can recreate their effect and have it all work perfectly again like this. With some liberal use of silicone spray then, the first roller can be installed, track slid up, the other roller installed, and limiting screws added to finish it off. If we really want to, we could replace the screws with rivets eventually, but as it all needs to be taken apart, cleaned, painted, and greased again anyways, we'll leave it like this for now. So, with this track completely modified, we can offer it up to the seat for good, finesse it back into place, and become a human pretzel to get it bolted down tight.
There it is.
I think you're starting.
See what it'll actually do with a human being sitting on it. So that's all the way to the front. There's all
Wow, and the rollers are rolling.
That's perfect.
If only we can design it in such a way that we have no windshield, so you can always put your hand up there.
True, but I think I'd like one. Regardless, that's worked out great, so let's just rinse and repeat for the passenger side and get this thing finished. Hold on. Wait a... That's not... I see.
So here's a funny thing, which no lunatic saw coming. Specifically this one. It turns out that while amazingly British Leyland were sensible enough to make the seat rails mirror images of each other, Mazda, a beloved company worldwide responsible for two of the greatest cars of the 90s, did not make the seats mirrored.
Why'd you do it, Mazda? Okay, sure, on the surface, it may seem like we could just widen the track spacing and drill new mounting locations in the floor, but we aren't that lucky. There's no room to move outward, and if these points were to move inward the 3/4 of an inch we need, you can tell from the driver's side that we'd be at the edge of the existing floor, leaving practically no airspace around the muffler by the time we get sheet metal back in here later, and that's not going to work.
So although it's not exactly our favorite plan, what we're actually just going to do here is take all this seat apart, take all the foam off and everything, and drill a hole there, weld in a new nut in the correct location, and then up in here, this boss is actually a shallower profile than that one. So we don't actually have room to drill a new hole 3/4 inch beside the existing one here, so we'll actually have to create like a little bit of a shelf that extends over to allow us to put a hole there. But then we can just use these brackets, which we've already made. We don't have to design and make new ones. It makes the seats identical, which I thought they were in the first place, and then we can proceed.
After some messing around with hog rings and bolts then, we've quickly stripped things down to these bare pans, and you can see more clearly with them side by side just how different these areas actually are. While I did just suggest a functional solution to this headache, after a bit more reflection, I really do want this to be as tidy as possible. So here we go again. With that all tidied up then, we've put the roadblock behind us, no thanks to Mazda, and we can press on with finishing up the rest of the track system, like we were about to when this came up. That then takes care of that. I highly doubt you imagined we'd spend this long on something as seemingly trivial as seat tracks, but judging by the rest of the project, it really shouldn't be a surprise at all. On the whole then, I think this is a very tidy solution to mount a couple of seats that were never intended to live in a Triumph, so there's nothing left to do but chuck them together again and throw them in the car. Except, well, looky there! That might be why the driver's seat was a bit saggy. And get a beat on the hack job. What do they use, a butter knife? A chainsaw would have been better. It's easy to assume at this stage as well then that there is something equally awry going on here too. So great. That's what you get for buying used stuff off Kijiji. At least it's not exactly a mission critical task though, right? Right? Nuts. Thanks for watching, and thanks as well to our amazing patrons and donators who tangibly support the channel. If you'd like to help out while getting a few perks, there are links in the description below. Keep wrenching, and we'll catch you next time.